episode 39 of Technolotics. I'm Francis McGillicuddy, and here we have the wonderful, the magnificent...
Me.
Yes, also known as Garrett Stack.
Hello, and welcome to the show.
Yes. Join us for another 40 minutes of fun and entertainment.
Oh,
entertaining.
Let's keep it to 30. I'm straining myself just sitting here.
Okay. Let's move it along to our first story this week,
Roll on.
which is fear and loathing in single-sex schools. So, parents have long believed that sending their children to single-sex schools was actually better for them, especially for girls because they were away from the distraction of boys. Ooh, scary. So, many single-sex schools have actually, some of them perform better in the UK's league tables. However, one guy has actually done a worldwide study on single-sex versus co-educational schools, and he's seen no actual trend that shows that single-sex schools are consistently better than co-educational schools. And frankly, it seems pretty obvious that they wouldn't be, because, you know, first of all, single-sex schools can get to choose often the pupils they take in, so they're only going to take the best people. So you have to pretty much apply to these schools, and children have to have done to a certain level of academic achievement before they can get in. So first of all, that's going to skew their results in a certain direction. Also, many of them are fee paying, so you can only get people from a certain social and economic background, so that could also work in favour of their results, because obviously people can pay for their kids to go to school, they can pay for them to go for grinds. You know, the kids don't have to, do a part-time job to help pay the rent or something like this, you know, so they can concentrate purely on study. And, you know, saying that background, maybe academic achievement might be, thought highly of, so children are encouraged, to do well in school.
There was always some dodginess in this argument. I always thought it was kind of funny, because the basic argument is that, supposedly, according to the statistics, boys do better in mixed schools and girls do better in single sex. So what they're saying is that in school, age 16 and 15, boys are less distracted by girls than girls are distracted by boys.
Which is I found that very strange, actually. I would have thought to be arguing.
No. Any teacher who has found a student gently stroking the underside of his desk while staring at the back of head or side of cheek of a fellow classmate will know that to be untrue. I love this story. It's got everything. Schoolgirls and their performance.
Yeah, I think it's very strange that, they think, okay, we should all send the girls to schools where there are no boys, but the boys need schools where there are girls. So, I mean...
Maybe should have inflatable girls for those schools.
How can you have both? Do you have just, the girls have to turn for a little bit just to appease the boys, and then they can go back to class?
Now, as a boy, I can tell you, going to single-sex school turns you into gay. Because that's what happened to me. No,
yeah.
I'm just kidding. I was always gay. No, just kidding. There's nothing wrong with being gay. Just kidding.
Well,
it's fucked up. It does. It screws you up going to single-sex school. In Ireland, it's even more screwed up because we have primarily single-sex primary schools, or at least still very, very many.
Some, yes.
And that is screwed up because you come out of primary school. I went to mixed secondary school and single-sex primary school. And when I went into secondary school, I thought a woman was like something you saw on TV. I'd never really met a girl outside of my immediate family, and it was very, very fucked up and odd. You really didn't socialise, you know? Especially maybe if you were kind of from a big estate where there was lots of kids, that's fine. But if you didn't, the girls in your family, your cousins and stuff, were the only girls that you knew. I'm telling you, once you fucked one cousin, you fucked them all. So
yeah, I think
pales, you know.
It's very strange that they think we should separate the two sexes at a certain age, but then you're expected to. Just suddenly you're out of secondary school or whatever, and suddenly you're expected to be able to socialise and actually communicate with the opposite sex as if you've been doing it for years, except you've had no experience of doing it during a crucial stage of your development. So you're meant to you can go off, study and learn, but then you're meant to be able to interact perfectly with the opposite sex when you come out of this kind of situation. It's stupid, it's crazy. And frankly, it'd be interesting to see just how fucked up people are, or what the differences in the communication and social skills are between people who go to co-educational schools and single-sex schools. Is there actual quantifiable differences?
Yeah, it's one of the things about Americans. People are always, ragging on Americans. Is that the trendy word? I don't know. Dissing Americans. But one of the great things about a lot of Americans is that they have much higher social skills than a lot of Europeans, especially intergender social skills. And because it's just unnatural to be in that situation. You have far fewer single-sex schools in the United States, and I think it really does show. So, well, apparently we have academic evidence, once again, proving the obvious.
Yeah.
Keep your kids with other kids, let them play doctors and nurses. Film it and sell it on the internet. There's a buck to be made. But hey, okay, moving on.
Anyway, enough of that. Send your kids to a co-educational school when you have them. If you have them.
Don't have them.
Don't have them.
Wouldn't recommend it. Very painful.
Stings a little. Anyway, moving on to our next story, which is social networking products which game the system. So, we've come across an article which deals with a certain number of social networking systems which are just a little bit different from what you might have come across beforehand, and certainly they raise a lot of questions for those who use them and for those who actually take advantage of what these services offer. One is called Sales Genius, and what it consists of is salespeople send out emails to just random customers. The customers click on a link to go to a website, and then on that website the salespeople are essentially able to record every single click and every single web page you visit. So they're able to get an entire history of your visit to that website. So obviously that website might be advertising something like cars or something like this. So the salesperson then can see what models of car you actually looked at and what pieces you clicked on. So he knows exactly what you might be interested in. So then he rings you back and he bases his pitch on what he's seen you do. So essentially it's a little like, someone following you around the shopping mall and seeing what things you stop at, on a shelf and look at for a while and making little notes, and then coming up to you at some later stage and going, ooh, I saw you looking at this, except it's not done as overtly as that. They go, oh, there's an offer on this product, or, next week we're doing a demonstration, would you be interested? So, while this might all seem fine, you're looked at all day, every day, the thing is that you don't know they're actually following you around on a website or looking at you, and that's the kind of problem with this service. You don't know you're being surveyed, and you don't know that information is then being used to sell a product to you. Now, another one is LinkedIn, which is a social networking site for jobs, and essentially what it allows you to do, much like any other social networking site, you can connect to your friends, and then your friends' friends can connect to you via them. So you can get chains of connections to people you do know, and then further out you have people you don't know, but they're 1 degree separated. Now what the service does is, if one person can request someone you don't know, or say a CEO of a company, and one of your friends wants to get in contact with that CEO but doesn't know them, well then they can get in contact via you, and you vouch for that person because you know them. So it seems all well and good, vouching for someone you know. The problem is that if the people at both ends are people you don't know, you're kind of left in the situation of who are these people? I'm saying, I know this person and they're good, to someone you don't know. So you're saying, please employ this person or talk to them, but I don't know who you are. I don't know who the person I'm talking to is.
That's not the only problem with this service. You're giving them a list of all the people you know and how you know them, and what they do. That's a really powerful piece of information for a company to have about you. I certainly wouldn't trust any company with a list of my close personal friends.
It's close personal friends, but it's also like kind of business contacts and all this. I mean, it seems more linked in towards business contacts and things. It's not just like your personal friends, because
you can sell that too, I'm sure.
With jobs.
Well, that's a bit
They're
of a
all
problem.
useless.
In a few years' time, though,
Maybe, yeah.
Our friends will have jobs. We'll still be bums. But
yeah, we'll still be bums. So we can get you in there. Now, the worst one, of course, is Jigsaw, which is kind of, it's a little creepy, kind of black market for contact information. So essentially in the business world, people give out business cards to people. They go, alright, you seem interesting in whatever, I enjoy talking to you, here's my business card if you want to get in contact with me for various reasons afterwards. Now what people can do with Jigsaw is they can take that contact information and trade it, and essentially sell it for other contact information. So you can go, oh, I got this contact information from this company, but I'm not interested in talking to them much. Ooh, but I'll trade it for someone I do want to talk to. And it's kind of this weird little black market where essentially contact information becomes money, and it's like trading baseball cards. And it breaches the trust of the person who actually hands out the business card in the first place, because he or she assumes that the business card and contact information is going to be used only by that individual. That it's not going to be sold like, some other commodity, or, or traded for something better, then it's like, do you promise to use this contact details only to send stuff to me, or
anything that makes people more reluctant to give out the contact details is bad, because it means they're building higher walls around them. And as we kind of progress into more virtualized contacts and using media to contact each other and communicate more indirectly, then those walls become more isolating.
Yeah, it's a definite breach of trust, I believe. Using this service and taking something someone has given to you in good faith that you will use, for your own reasons, for personal use. Essentially, it's for personal use, and then just trading it off to get something better is definitely better. Sorry, bogger accent.
Yes, this is actually kind of links into something I was thinking about recently. Email is one thing. You can change your email if it gets found out. Although you pretty much need an email now, right? 5-10 years down the line, you'll probably need to be on the social network equivalent of Google, whatever that is, whether it's MySpace or whatever, to lead an effective social life. What do you do if you're a public figure? What do you do if you're Bertie Ahern or Amanda Norton? More on that later. Yeah. Or any other public figure of note. How do you partake of that, the openness of those virtual contacts, without being swamped?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Without hundreds of people jumping onto your site and commenting you to death, or sending you so many emails,
virtually stalking you,
stalking you.
It's a tough one, and you can have permissions levels and stuff like this, but they kind of defeat the way in which it empowers people to connect with each other. So social networks, colliding with celebrity and various levels of access to people, can only have two results: either those people become more accessible, or they become more isolated. It's not a good thing, but nothing you can do about it, really.
It's a hard balance to strike, I'd say, between the needs to actually be contactable, and also the need to kind of restrict access to that contact information, because you don't want to make it completely public knowledge where everyone can find you, and even people you don't want to hand that information out to.
I think we saw this sort of thing when Paris Hilton's mobile phone was hacked, where people got really personal photos of her, whatever. Yeah. But more importantly, they got her phone book, and she had the number of everyone in Hollywood so for 2 days. You could phone Steven Spielberg or whatever, and as a result, you had this horrible situation where pretty much every celebrity
was running off to the phone shop to
get that must suck, because fair enough, they're celebrities. You say what you like, but they're real people too, and if you're in the public eye, that's a problem. You don't want to have to tell everyone and worry about not being able to contact your kids because you had to change your phone because some tard phoned you up and oh, you're famous. Oh, screw that.
Although there are social networks for famous people.
And by tard, I wasn't referring to the retarded or mentally handicapped, who are great people, but it was more just slang.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
No, I believe I read somewhere about a social networking site for famous people, or you had to be a certain level of richness before you could get on it. And it was pretty much
the point.
It was invitation only, and you essentially, you had to be, at least above, be your C-list celebrity to get into
Smug.com, the social network for you.
Smug.com. But it was the idea that these people could, get in contact with each other or whatever, without actually staying away from the hoi polloi and the plebs.
But I don't like that, because that's just like building a walled garden. It's like a fenced-in community. They can only ever, meet each other if they're. It's just bad. What happens to their contact with the real world? Yeah, the little people.
Little people.
And it's like you more and more isolate the golden ticket of exclusivity of social contacts. It's like as if you were in school and the popular kids you just actually couldn't talk to them. If you went up to speak to them and you bounce off or something, and they had bodyguards.
Yeah, there was a magic shield.
It's a bad allegory, but you know what I mean. Okay, next story. moving on. Okay. I think it went to sleep the last couple of days. Our next story, this is a really fiendish example of the encroaching government surveillance in our society. The United Kingdom, new plans are afoot to scan email for child porn. Sounds perfectly reasonable. Why not scan email for child porn? Until you look a little deeper and realise what an absurd and dangerous proposition it is. Because they could find my child porn. No, that's not one. Well, okay, this is dangerous for many reasons. First of all, the organisation that they're using, the Internet Watch Foundation, who will be involved in looking for this child porn, have another function. And that other function is to look for any illegal activities on the Internet. Well, illegal activities are a broad, wide net of things. Can you imagine you, a few years ago, when you were foolishly drunk, you smoked a spliff, picture was taken, this gets emailed to you in work. No, it's caught in the government surveillance net, which is scanning every email for illegal content and illegal activities. This is just insanity. The idea that you can put the foot in the door to start scanning, indiscriminately scanning every email sent for whatever reason, is just opening the door to kind of surveillance that's terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, what next? You have microphones everywhere, but it's okay. They only turn on when you start discussing child porn. You know.
Yeah, we thought you were discussing child porn.
So that we'll kick in your window, come in, beat you, and then we'll find out later on it wasn't. So it's all right. This is absolutely terrifying. Obviously, as I said, illegal activities of any kind will be a problem. Also, this organisation, the Internet Watch Foundation, they're responsible for looking for notifying the police about P2P. The peer-to-peer software isn't necessarily illegal. It can be used for file sharing, which is certainly a civil crime, but it's not a criminal offence, and neither is P2P itself illegal. So this is really, really dodgy. This is interest groups which have formed and aligned to watch the internet, being used to watch you, to watch your personal communications.
And these people, like, essentially it's just a group of people who came together and declared themselves moral guardians of the internet. Like, who are these people and what gives them the right to decide this? And now they're being given, like, legitimate powers. And like, they're a bunch of, who are, nobodies.
Yeah.
We don't know who these people are, and suddenly they're just being given the power to decide, which websites are just blocked and banned. And like, the way it sounds from what the article was describing is these people can simply mail an ISP and go, this website's, wrong.
This is the other part. They're going to be blocking websites at the ISP level, any website involved in illegal activities. Now, if a website in the UK is involved in illegal activity, that website will be shut down. But if a website is in another country and you're accessing it and the act which it's depicting or the thing it's trying to sell you is illegal in the United Kingdom, you won't be able to watch it. Again, it's a broad selection of things, acts and activities. And what will be your recourse? There's no recourse. There's no recourse in this legislation. And this is horrible. So if you live in the UK, go speak to your MP about this, because it's like they're cutting off the section of the library that describes things that are illegal in the United Kingdom. Yeah. No books from Bolivia, or anywhere else that they produce the finest pharmaceuticals.
The problem is they'll have the power to block a website it considers unacceptable as well. Ooh. So not only illegal, but unacceptable. Now, unacceptable is rather broad.
That's anything, really.
That's anything that they don't like, and you won't even know that the website's gone. All you get is a 404. So, like,
do you know what I find unacceptable? Paris Hilton's weight. I think we should ban her. But that's just my opinion. Their opinion will differ.
That would be great. Ban Paris Hilton from the internet.
Perfect. An internet without Paris Hilton sounds like Nirvana to me. Okay, moving on. Jesus, this is taking forever. Okay, rush through, because we don't care. We just want to be finished. Okay. No, that's not true. Reload it. To the point where we'd give you oral sex over the internet if it was somehow physically possible. Not really, though. Okay, the future of futurism. Here's an article on futurism and the two potential ways of viewing the world. The Neo-Malthusians, a reference to Thomas Malthus, the philosopher who believed that we should fight and struggle for our existence at a primal level but in the marketplace, and versus the cornucopians, as in a cornucopia, I guess. Cornucopians. Neo-Malthusians supposedly see the future as a terrible time of disaster and dystopia, versus the cornucopians who see the future as limitless possibilities and endless riches. And according to this quite naive article on Slate.com, the future has become more fantastic. Of course, it has become fantastic if you're not one of the 80% of the world living below the poverty line, if you're not suffering from the effects of global warming, as in Hurricane Katrina et al., or if you're essentially not one of the elite, which, luckily enough, you watching this podcast with an internet connection and a roof above your head and the money to afford both those things, and us sitting here with the money to afford to record it, are in that lovely group, and it's very easy to forget that we are very, very fucking privileged. But the majority of the world aren't in that position. So it looks like, for the majority of people, at least to me, my naive perspective on the world, the life of the majority of people in the world is only going to get worse in the near future. But according to the author of this article, John Robb, is it? There we go. No, it isn't.
No.
That's just someone mentioned it. You shall remain nameless.
You should remain nameless. You're better off.
Getting better all the time. But less kind of dramatic way. So in the past, where things were predicted, such as giant robots or undersea cities, those things have not come to emerge. But as Robert Cringely always says, change, we over-anticipate or over-expect change in the short term, but it over-delivers in the long term, so it's more rapid and more strange. If we look back 100 years or 200 years, the changes are mammoth and dramatic. And to people living in those times, we live in a very strange period of time. But if we look back 20, 30, even 40 years, things are pretty much stagnant. It's because we can't see change in that short period of time. It seems more similar. Possibly also because we're confronted with media images of the near past, whereas the distant past looks far more alien. But anyway, moving on.
Yeah, well, sounds like mostly futures come up with a whole pile of crap. I think.
Great job though. What do you do? I'm a futurist. I sit and I guess what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, you just make up crap all day long, and that's your job. Like, and you either decide, yeah, the world's getting better, so I'll be one of those guys going, happy, yay! It's like you're on happy drugs all the time. The world is good. Doom. We're all doomed. It's very easy to go, we're all doomed.
I suppose there is a serious point behind this article, that it is quite easy to see the world in really dichotomous terms. It's quite easy to get really depressed by the encroach of government into our civil liberties, or global warming, or just any one of the myriad of terrible things that are happening all the time. Or it's also quite easy to shut your eyes and smile and be a happy blinkered consumer. Both perspectives are probably unhealthy. Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Enough of the future. Back to the present. Back to the present. Is that enough not to get in?
Oh no. Actually, you know what it's just reminded of? The most cheesy phrase I ever heard in my life. I'm not sure where it's from, but it's the past is history, the future is a mystery, but this moment is a gift, which is why it's called the present.
Oh yeah, I've heard that one before.
We're not fucking Hallmark.
It's cheese central.
Sorry. Go ahead anyway.
Cheesy. Anyway, the Irish government is currently pushing through a new defamation bill which will allow a defence of innocent publication to people providing the medium. So essentially for ISPs this is good news for them, because they can go, if you write a blog and you say something terrible about someone and they get really annoyed about it and decide, oh, I must sue somebody, well, they can't sue the ISP. So the ISP are going, hooray! Of course, you who wrote it are still in deep shit. And you better get a lawyer fast. Now, the thing is, the bill has been proposed and is due for debate in the Dáil before being passed in November. Currently, the wording of it is extremely complicated and probably badly done. So, in some ways, it kind of illustrates how little maybe legislators understand, like, you know, new media and the issues related to all these things, that they just can't write a simple, clear piece of legislation, because this defence now is allowable. Now, the thing is that ISPs could be liable in the case where they're responsible for, or they play a part in editing a website, because then they could have the opportunity to take off the content. But in the case of things like blogs, and say maybe podcasts like ours, and if you say things and the ISP has no involvement in the editing process, then essentially you're indeed doo-doo and the ISP will get off scot-free. And in these cases, you know, people are more likely to sue the ISP if they can, because the ISP has money. You know, you're probably pretty poor, it's hardly worth suing you, but if they can go after the ISP, they'll go after it first, because it's got the money to pay, you know, huge legal costs and huge damages. So it's, in some ways, it's great for the ISP, it's not so good for you. And it's not so good that legislators just can't write a decent piece of legislation. Now, the UK has laws which absolve ISPs from any liability So essentially, they managed to write a clear law, and the ISPs get off scot-free. One thing with this bill is that in the future, ISPs may well be forced to disclose the identity of bloggers in such cases as defamation cases. So before, if someone was defamed and they felt like their good name had been damaged, it could be quite hard for them to find out who exactly had said that thing in the chat room or on the blog. Now an ISP will be forced to actually go through its records and find out exactly who was on, who actually wrote that at the time, or who was likely to have.
So big surprise, this is some legislation which is brought in to protect large businesses and to further endanger individuals. So I'd imagine probably newspapers are probably being covered in the legislation. Viewers overseas may or may not be aware that the United Kingdom has some of the most stringent and horrifically onerous and unfair libel legislation in the world, and Ireland is even worse. We have, to the best of my knowledge, one of the worst systems in the world. So essentially you can't say anything. In fact, should we ever mention anyone in this show at all, which we do constantly, we essentially put ourselves in a position where we can be sued and or castrated, legally speaking, by and for our actions, even if they are parodical or intended for humorous reasons, or are critical in a way which is critical of the individual rather than of their activity or accusing them of anything. So there's no freedom of speech, and there's no real defence in law for mentioning anyone. So the only way you can be safe is to speak in purely neutral terms and to not give an opinion, or to be anonymous, and the anonymity is being taken away. And it's a very important safety valve for any society. So it's just really, really bad. This is incredibly terrible legislation. Bad especially for us, because one day down the road we will be sued and shackled.
Shackled in chains.
And they'll play selected bits from our shows in such a way as to make us sound as if we're horrible monsters.
Hate everybody.
Oh, can you imagine the reel that they'll be able to chop together? Ooh.
Oh.
It'd be like those pictures when they find somebody who's done something really, really supposedly terrible, and they've arrested them, and they find a picture of the person and it's in the paper, and they're like, "Argh!" You know that wasn't the best picture they found of them.
Exactly.
They were like looking through
just
every
stumped
picture.
their toe or something, or tripped, and they're just like, ah.
But why is it never a photo of the person being like, can you tell me that guy he never smiled in his life, he never had a fond moment?
He was never happy. That's why he turned to evil.
I'm going to turn to evil. Is that a career? Let's turn to evil.
Turn to evil.
Evil, eh?
Left, right, and then evil.
It's beside the chipper. Okay, so I've been looking forward to this. So lollipop-headed ditz queen Amanda Condom has left Rocket Boom, has been allegedly fired, although the website says in very starky terms that she left over disagreement. They tried to fit her in, but her Hollywood ambitions were too large and she left in a huffy huff. But apparently she has indeed been fired. So no more blonde ditziness on the 3-minute pointless podcast, which tells you nothing you didn't already know and allows you to watch an unhealthily emaciated blonde woman with dubious breasts tell you something uninteresting. Oh well, hope they can replace her, maybe a cutout with one of the lads who filmed the show behind it. She doesn't have the lips kind of through. Those dodgy old Hulk cartoons or something. Or maybe they can just hire Lala and then I'll watch it.
Oh yeah, I'll watch it too, repeatedly.
Yes. Alone. Okay. So one more story and then we're done.
Last story. The US military, actually the Air Force Office of Scientific Research, is currently funding a $450,000 study that attempts to mine the internet and especially blogs for invaluable help in fighting the war on terror. Now, some absolute genius, and this guy should really get a medal if he hasn't got one already, has come up with the fantastic idea of ranking blogs and ranking topics of relevance by the number of hyperlinks to that blog. So, I mean, lightning must have struck his brain repeatedly to come up with this one. And of course it is totally unrelated to the method which was used by the world's largest and most popular search engine. Google for those who don't know.
Yeah, you know, they could really come up with something if they actually read blogs and the thousands and probably at this point millions of blogs screaming, please get out of Iraq, you fucking hypocritical, lying monkey boys, and then get out of the White House. Maybe they could learn something of use, but if they're just going to scan for the word Bin Laden...
It's idiotic.
It really is.
So Osama, stop blogging about where you are.
Yeah.
Today I was in the mountains, at a river to the west.
Yeah, luckily for the CIA, he has an RSS
Here is my GPS coordinates.
You can track him online, you can play geotagging with this Osama. But they're just too silly. Before now, they hadn't looked. All they needed was a quick Google.
There was the information all the time at Osama's blog. That feels so silly.
His description's great though on his blog. You know, I like pizza, blondes, and destroying Western civilization. You can reach me at terrorist-in-chief at usamarules.com. Okay, so on to our media pimp. This week my media pimps are extraordinarily exciting. The site Lost Words allows you to see words that are no longer in the English language, so you can sound really, really clever and include them in emails, confuse co-workers and other irritants.
Exactly. And challenge them to look for it in the dictionary, which they mightn't find.
That's true. So these are actually useless for Scrabble, but they're great for pretension. And as we all know, pretension is the entire purpose of life. Become a Camcorder Pro is a guy from CNET, which has actually got some really, really simple and good tips, which we should use, but we haven't bothered, even though I've read it. For making your video look better, editing it together and all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in vidcasting or even making a movie, check it out. It's some simple stuff, but and then a plane flew by.
Oh no, that's black helicopter.
It's the black. They'll just come in the windows. If only we were live casting this, you'd get to see it.
You get to see the arrests.
But no.
We'll have to shut it down and get it uploaded and everything before they come in. You know, because we've barricaded the hallway. So that'll get us a couple of hours.
Definitely. We put Amanda Condom between the crack in the door and the door, jammed it shut.
Just gonna lollipop him head.
Seriously though, what's the point of that show? Rocket Boom, what? Z Frank, the other one, that's pretty good. The other little cast they had, the comedy one, it's pretty funny. He's kind of absurd, he's got some good ideas. But Amanda Condom, jump out a window.
Yeah, exactly. You'd wonder, like, what were people watching for?
Yeah, I realise we're not the most watchogenic kind of dudes. Nobody's tuning in to watch us flex, right? But, you know, if you want that, just get porn. You know, and if you like a story, watch The L Word. I pimped it last week, it's a great show. It's like porn, but with a story.
It must be, pretty sad to, like, go to
go and watch a little tech vidcast for the titty. Come on. You can do better than that.
You can do better than that. You're on the net.
You are.
Come on.
It's like paying for porn. It's just...
Market it, people. Hey, seek and you shall find.
You shall.
Google. Anyway, StoryCorps is my only pimp this week, and essentially it's a group which are setting out to record an oral history of the USA. So they're setting up booths all across the USA and giving out, on the website they have interview tips for how, essentially you drag in your granny or some old person that you just find on the street, and you give them an interview, and essentially it's going to allow people to record like stories which don't go into the history books, but I mean you could get some really interesting eyewitness stories of like events that have never been covered, of stuff that's never been covered, you know.
Really
so I mean you could like interview, you know, your gran or your uncle or someone like this who was like, you know, maybe at like a great speech, or you know, who knows if they're still around, you know, someone who was in the war.
Oh jeez, I'd have the job of editing these though, can you imagine? And then I boiled the kettle, and I swear to God it was the best cup of feckin' tea I ever fucking had. No, I wouldn't say fucking with it. Bloomin' head. No, there was no sugar in them days, no. It didn't make sugar until much later. There was no, you had to spit in it if you wanted sweeter. Yes, you did.
Well, like a lot of, you know, folklore and like history is like oral history, which is, you know, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't actually make it into history books.
Because things like that didn't happen mostly.
Yeah, because mostly history books are made up.
Yeah, they're. But you know, this is cool. It's like Steven Spielberg was behind a similar project, which kind of catalogued the show of the Holocaust from the experience of those people who'd survived it and were still alive and were croaking around the early 90s. And so now this is kind of a more widespread thing, and the cheapness of storage and the omnipotence of social networking and stuff, these tools are allowing us to do this. It's a really cool idea. It's giving life to the little man, not this little man, but the little man in the street whose life would have kind of faded into...
Yeah, exactly. You kind of like the little footprint in history.
A little bit of immortality.
Yeah, a little bit of immortality, you know. You're kind of, your little story of whatever, maybe one experience, maybe your whole life, maybe it's a really long interview, you know, but that little footprint, you know, goes into the archives and is there forever, you know. So
John Smart has
someday someone might be like, you know, wondering like what was life, you know, like during, you know, say if there was an Irish version, what was it like, you know, during the 50s in Ireland, you know, who knows? Probably shite.
Yeah, pretty much like the 18th century.
Probably shite, but like maybe, you know, some description of like, you know, ordinary life would give, you know, historians a very, I think like as a historical thing that could be very interesting, because you'd actually have like real historical accounts.
Sounds cool. Okay, well, also this is kind of reminds me of something that John Smart, the accelerating change guy, said in a speech, which is that like he was talking about immortality and the possibility of living beyond the age of 200 or whatever. I think it's John Smart. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. crew@technolotics.com. But what he said essentially is that there's very good and important reasons why it's not going to be possible to live beyond around about 150, 200 or whatever. Really kind of deep intrinsic reasons for that in our biochemistry. And, you know, it's going to be a very long time before we can do that, if we can ever do that. So, but the other thing he said was that as AI gets better developed and as our user interfaces mirror us more effectively, you know, in 30 years' time, when your mother dies, the copy of her that will be her interface companion that searched for her on the internet and answered emails for her and all the rest will be like, you know, 20% of representation, 20% accurate representation of her. And, you know, 100 years from then, or 20 or 30, you know, who's to know at the pace of change, the copy will be, you know, 40% of her, 50% of her, and eventually it will get to the point where there's this replication of the person which captures something really important and intrinsic about them and a great deal of, you know, you're always going to have error, but a great deal of what that person was really like. And this is a small step towards doing that, you know. And who's to know, in a few years' time, maybe we can look back, do some statistical analysis on these videos and construct a little replication of old Tim, and he can, you know, we can have a chat with him and it'll be great.
Fantastic.
Of course we could actually talk to the real old Tim, but who'd want to? I mean, he's really boring. You can't turn him off when he's at the end of the story. Exactly. Oh, would you like to stay for tea?
Don't like your tea.
Okay. We hope you enjoyed this show. As always, we have wiki notes up on our site linked from Technolotics.com. Please feel free to send us an email or suggest a story or, you know, not.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. See ya.